Welcome to the First Unitarian Universalist Society of Albany, affectionately known as Albany UU. My name is Sam Trumbore, and I serve as the minister of this congregation. I hope the title of this service this morning wasn't intimidating or frightening to anyone. Dealing with the word that gets called ugly can get kind of ugly. Our theme for the month has been nurturing beauty, not dealing with ugly or uglification. Yet, as I hope you'll experience in our service, addressing the process of uglification creates space for beauty to emerge. I experienced uglification as I was growing up because of my prominent ears. When my father took our family to England in 1968 for a year's sabbatical, the boys at the school that I attended teased me about my ears. They liked to call me Frankenstein Jr. My mom decided to take me to a plastic surgeon to get them fixed so that I could look like everybody else. I remember being in the surgeon's office and him explaining the procedure to me and that I would be wearing a helmet type bandage over the summer. And I started to cry. I just couldn't or wouldn't do it. Today, I'm very glad that I didn't. I've gained self-acceptance. I look in the mirror and I appreciate their shape as symbolic of my mindful attentiveness or striving to be a good listener. And it has an unexpected benefit, as my hearing is probably way better than many people my age because of their shape. So let us this morning question that term ugly and recognize its oppressive dimensions and find beauty in who we already are as we join together in the celebration of life. And our prelude is our choir, our virtual choir. Lift Me Up to Higher Ground is the song they'll sing, and it's by Andy Beck. Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, virtual choir. Oh, I wouldn't mind hearing it again. That'd be okay. And let us light our chalices as our custom and use the words that you'll soon see appearing. There they are on the screen. Welcoming all free seekers, truth and meaning. We gather to excite the human spirit, to inspire its growth and development, to respond morally and ethically to a troubled world, and to sustain a vital and nurturing religious community. We have a lovely, familiar song to sing with us. This Little Light of Mine, and Alyssa Yeager is going to lead us in it.
Hello, everybody. It's Elizabeth Baldus, Acting Director of Religious Education here at Albany UU. I'm so sorry that I'm not able to be there in person with you today, particularly because today is the last meeting of our Sunday morning religious education groups for the church year. I just want to take a moment and thank everybody, the kids, their grown-ups, the volunteers, and our amazing RE staff of Paula Brewer and Adrienne Cattell for making our Sunday morning groups run so well this year, whether they were meeting in person or online. Thanks for all that you do to keep our program running. And now for our story. That is the end of our story. Here at Albany UU, some people call what we do on Sunday morning Sunday school, so we're a little bit of a kind of a school. We try really hard to make sure that everything that we have recognizes the individual strengths and qualities of each person who's involved, and I hope that we've succeeded. Thanks so much.
And our RE program does not have flying school either. So, but thanks for being here. And if you want to go to your classes, this is your opportunity to depart. So thanks for being here with us this morning. And do we have our Facebook friends with us? Yes, good to see that. Welcome, Facebook friends. This is Sam Trumbore, and we're having our service is titled today, Reclaiming Ugly. And this is based on Queer Spirit podcast, which is part of a curriculum that we use. And I wanted to give you some pieces of it. So we're going to hear, there's 3 clips that I put together from the podcast, which kind of give you the outline of what we're going to be talking about. So Kate, if you could run those now, that'd be great. And this is Vanessa.
Reclaim Ugly stands for reclaim, uplift, glorify, love yourself, and create a world where other people can as well. And we work to create spaces where people who have been uglified out of community, including their queer communities or their BIPOC communities, their families, the greater world, to be able to come together and experience like love and liberation and inclusivity. Our goal is to help people understand what uglification is, how we perpetuate it in our individual relationships, as well in our greater system, and how we can get rid of uglification and create a world where everybody feels safe. Everybody knows they're welcome. Everyone gets to love themselves and know that they're going to be protected in loving themselves. Uglification is what happens when we choose to perceive or portray other people as ugly for a purpose. Maybe we're uglifying people to make ourselves feel better. Maybe we're uglifying people because we've been taught that these certain standards or ways that their bodies are configured or the ways that they have desires or exist in the world is wrong. But it's where we choose to perceive someone as ugly, as monstrous, as bad. And there's so many historical examples of uglification. One being the very creation of this country. In order for the pilgrims and colonizers to come and create the United States of America, they had to uglify the indigenous people that were here. They convinced themselves that the indigenous people that were here were monstrous or less than human or quote unquote savage, and used that idea to justify murder, to justify war, and to justify the stealing of land, the stealing of children, and putting children into these weird Christian homes where they lost their heritage, their language. Recently, we see uglification happening with a lot of the Black Lives Matter and racial justice protesters. We see uglification happening with feminist protesters, people who protested against the walls being built and humans being put in cages on the border. The media portrays our protesters, our activists as violent, as aggressive, as threats to democracy so that they can silence them and so that they can invalidate them. And then lastly, we see uglification in the ways that we look at ourselves. When we think, oh no, something's wrong with my body, I need to work out so that I can look good when I go to the beach. That's uglifying your fat. Or when you think that, oh no, I'm aging, my face doesn't look good, that's uglifying, the fact that you're alive, that you have a human body that's living. And we even uplify each other in activist community. When we say that someone is not woke enough, someone's not using the right language, when we try to push people out because of conflicts instead of trying to work through them. There's so many ways that we practice uglification. And my goal is to just point out as many of them as possible so that we can reclaim our ugly and get free enough to enjoy our lives. Pleasure. And one thing that I also want to talk about with Reclaim Ugly or uglification is also just this concept of ugliness. We talk about racism, we talk about misogyny, sexism, homophobia, transphobia, but we don't talk about lookism that much. We don't talk about the fact that a lot of us are terrified of being perceived as ugly, as unattractive, because of the ways that we treat people who we perceive as unattractive and the opportunities that we extend to people that we perceive to be beautiful. We create hierarchies based off of looks, and a lot of us are aspiring to be at the top of that hierarchy for safety, for access, for love, but we've convinced ourselves that it's moral, that it's natural to want to be beautiful in whatever standard that you perceive beauty to be. So I love this idea of when we talk about reclaiming ugly, reclaiming our imagination from this standard, this idea of what is right and what is wrong, what is beautiful and what is ugly. And kind of like what you talked about, reclaiming our ability to empathize with other humans, to see other humans as tender, delicate people who are worthy of living and safety.
So take that in for a moment as we move to our spoken meditation. And this meditation comes from something that Michael Bronstein sent to me from Jack Kerouac. And as I read it, or when I read it from him, I thought of Vanessa, I thought of others who are somehow making a difference, even though they are working against a lot of cultural forces. So let us turn inward to receive these words. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Let us take these words and our own thoughts, reflections, and prayers into a time of silent meditation. Ugly is a powerful word that stimulates the basic human emotions of disgust, revulsion, and fear. Those labeled as ugly are categorized as unattractive, unpleasant to be near, visually offensive, vile, and base. They're experienced as menacing and dangerous, often exhibiting qualities of hostility and quarrelsomeness, maybe having a bad temper or anger, sullenness. They are the rejects of society. No self-respecting person wants to be put in the ugly box. So when I encountered that interview by Vanessa, titled Reclaiming Ugly, that was in our Meaning Matters packet for this month, I was very curious. Here is a queer femme who was bullied as a youth and labeled ugly. But rather than defining herself as a victim, she has recognized something very important about that word. She's recognized the deeper reality that motivates the word ugly. The term is a social construction and has been used specifically to harm and oppress marginalized people. Every one of us recognizes the power and influence being categorized as beautiful can confer. Mainstream beauty is a restrictive social construct that needs an opposite comparison to give it power. The strong and powerful have and will always define themselves as beautiful. The ones who are oppressed, subjugated, and marginalized are the ones who get defined out of the beauty category. In the American mainstream culture, that means anyone who is not Northern European, able-bodied, cisgender, heterosexual, thin, and young enough not to be showing obvious signs of the aging process. As a result, we are conditioned, coerced, and sometimes forced to perform, aspire towards, and do anything necessary to fit into society's standards for beauty, acceptability, and normality, often at the expense of our own freedom, joy, desires, and sometimes lives. If we cannot or do not succeed at assimilating into and maintaining external standards of beauty or respectability, we are turned into a spectacle, punished with exclusion, violence, cruelty, and told that it's our fault for not fitting into society's standard of beauty or normality. Vanessa names that conventional, socially approved form of beauty as only one way to experience beauty. If you deviate from that standard, life can be pretty harsh, especially if you haven't found an accepting community that affirms you for who you are, not who you should be by these oppressive standards. One way she liberated herself from the oppressive, dominant culture's view of beauty was through art and theater. She explains, being a baby dyke in San Francisco, one of the best things that ever happened to me was going to burlesque shows and drag shows and seeing fat, trans, queer, old dancers take off all their clothes and be frisky. I would sit in this audience, and it would be impossible for me not to love myself. Impossible for me not to imagine myself just as free as they were. Vanessa isn't focused on putting her energy into fighting all of the terrible things that are happening in the mainstream culture. She has a different approach based on attraction. She asks, how can we make our movement so juicy, so safe, so attractive, so the mainstream is like, ooh, how can I get up on this? So how did Vanessa get started on this oddly named Reclaim Ugly project? Let's listen to another clip from her queer podcast.
I signed on to social media. It's 2019. I signed on to social media, and Facebook alerted me that a man posted a picture of me. And I was pretty sure it was going to be a picture of a recent performance where I was looking so cute. I was wearing this jazzy red dress with a feather in my head, and I was like, ooh, everyone's going to compliment me on Facebook. But no, that is not what happened. It was some party promoter, a man that I did not know, who was trying to organize like a after party for a rapper and looking for women to be in the VIP lounge. And so I guess he hadn't been appreciating the women that reached out to him to be in the VIP lounge. So he Googled ugly Black women, found my picture. It was the #2 picture in 2019 for ugly Black women, and uploaded it on Facebook and said, me looking for baddies, the type of women that respond, what's wrong with y'all ladies? And I was livid, outraged, not hurt, because I had already did this work, and I knew that I lived in a world that see faces like mine and bodies like mine is ugly. But I was outraged that this man would use my picture to hurt other people, to make warnings, to create a standard of who was and who was not welcomed. I was so livid that I had to reach out to him and ask him, why would you do this? Take this picture down. I reached out to all the people who commented on that picture, people who laughed, who made jokes. I was like, why would you do this? Why, like, you all are grown people. Why would you do this? And eventually, and then I also posted on my Facebook, and like my Facebook friends were like, we love Vanessa, rawr, take it down. And so eventually he reached back to me and he told me that, A, he didn't know I was a real person, you know, even though it was a photograph of me and not a drawing or a cartoon, but he didn't know I was right, which comes back to this idea of dehumanizing uglification, just to dehumanize people. So he didn't think that I was real, and then he sent me to his Google search, and my picture was on Google because it was a part of an article written by a Black man who identified as an Afrofuturist to other Black men about why they should go to college so that they can find non-Black women. Because non-Black women are more attractive, more sexy, more sophisticated, more feminine than Black women. And he had pictures of me and Michelle Obama, you know, just like all these like powerful, I was like, oh, I can't believe I'm next to Michelle Obama. You know, but next to all of these powerful Black women, like analyzing our ugliness. And then all these pictures of non-Black women, like explaining how in juxtaposition, they're beautiful. So it was gross. I started writing about it. And then all these other people, like lots of people, a wide diversity of people, reached out to me to tell me about their own experiences with uglification. You know, whether they were bullied on the internet or all the different reasons that they were taught that their bodies, their faces, their existence is invalid. And I was like, we have a movement. And I have to tell you, Nick, since I've been doing this, I have to say that this has been the most joyful period of my life because I feel like I'm doing something beautiful and I feel so committed to it. And I have people that are doing it with me, and it just makes me feel like every day is a party for love. Yeah, so that's our history, that's our story.
This clip just blows my mind with its genius. She's confronted with a man who posted her picture and demanded that he take it down, but she doesn't stop there. She contacted each person who commented and confronted them with the harm that they were doing with their comments. She said partly because it's offensive to her personally, but she is more upset about how the man is perpetuating negative stereotypes about Black women. The passionate concern for the harm the use of her picture does to others to energize an overwhelming response kickstarts her movement. And she experiences that healing work of the movement as beautiful, meaningful, fulfilling, and satisfying. Reclaim Ugly's work is grounded in artistic expression. Their mission is to create educational materials, literature, events, and performances that educate diverse communities about how lookism and uglification collaborates to justify racialized, gender-based, fat-phobic, homophobic, transphobic, and ableist violence, hatred, criminalization, and discrimination, and how reclaiming ugly can joyfully heal and save lives by creating safer, more inclusive, and more welcoming communities, schools, workplaces, families, and movements. Vanessa talks a lot about creating safe, joyful, and healing spaces for people who have been uglified and marginalized. She's very focused on community building, bringing people together to work collaboratively to replace uglification with institutional and cultural practices of love, inclusivity, healing, and transformative imagination. Reclaim Ugly, as they say on their website, believes that most people aspire towards goodness and love, and consequently don't consent to these harmful value systems and practices of uglification. But powerful systems like government, religion, and capitalism work hard to suppress and prevent more inclusive and kind alternatives to coexisting, while coercively ideologizing their oppressive behavioral constructs as normal and moral. They punish people for behaving outside of these constructs, celebrate those who acquiesce and submit to them, and reward those who enforce and protect them. As a result, those oppressive and hierarchical behaviors have been replicated and modeled in almost every social, intimate, and esoteric realm of our collective consciousness, including schools, which is why there's bullying and clique orders, family, contributing to domestic violence and parental dominance, desirability, why there is intimate violence, rape culture, and body repression, friendship, why there's peer pressure, loneliness, and coercion, and even many liberation movements, why there is ableism, racism, classism, transphobia, and lookism on the picket lines and town halls. This is how systems use uglification to grow, prosper, and sustain themselves, how uglification translates into overt oppression, and why liberation often feels so inclusive. Hence, Reclaim Ugly's vision for liberation is one of transformative inclusion. That's a little complicated language. How about something a little more direct? Reclaiming ugly is, and this is the UGLY, uplift, glorify, and love yourself. Fat liberation, body positivity, migrant justice is human love, Black and Indigenous liberation, disability justice, housing for all, free health care for all people, all bodies, ending the prison industrial complex as we know it, abundant support for our elders, youth, and families, a world where all beauty is recognized and embraced, transformative imagination and radical inclusivity, deep friendship, rematriation and reparations, trans and queer liberation, you living your best life. Reclaiming ugly is the freedom to fall in love with yourself passionately and unconditionally. Enjoy your body without apology. Embrace and love other people regardless of their appearance or identity. Say hell no to any person, belief, or practice that interferes with your ability to peacefully love who you are. Imagine a world where all human beings can access love, safety, and resources they need to thrive and enjoy their life. To invite people to embrace the potency, freedom, and magic of reclaiming one's body, body parts, body functions, desires, heritage, health, disability, and struggles from the fear and tarnish of uglification. Sounds good, doesn't it? Sounds maybe a little bit like what Unitarian Universalism is up to. I think so. Well, these are all kind of warm, fuzzy concepts and ideas. How do you put it into practice? Let's hear our third audio clip from the podcast describing Vanessa's inspiration for her work.
So as we begin to wind down, I wonder if you can share with us a person, practice, or experience that has supported your queer spirit to flourish.
Oh, I am gonna say my mommy, my mother, Candy Rochelle Lewis, is the person who has allowed my queer spirit to flourish. She was the first person I told I was queer. Before I knew what queer was, I was like 5 years old. And she was reading The Little Mermaid to me. And I don't know if you remember the Disney version, but Ariel gave up her voice to pursue the prince. And then Ursula, who took the voice, created a persona for herself named Vanessa that used Ariel's voice. And I remember listening and I was like, why don't Ariel and Vanessa just date each other? They can all have a prince and be happy. And my mom was like, interesting. And so I told you a little bit later, when I hit the 8th grade, the bullying became really bad. And so what my mom did when I became suicidal and homicidal, her response was to take me to therapy. She got me a psychiatrist, a psychologist, and put me in group therapy. And when my psychologist outed me, my mom in front of me told my psychologist that her response to my queerness was not okay. She's a Christian, that God made me perfect because the psychologist thought that my queerness might be feeding my depression. That God made me perfect, that her God doesn't make any mistakes. And then her next route was to take me to a theater class in downtown LA, which meant that she had to drive about almost 2 hours back and forth in LA traffic while not being at work. And in this theater class, I was around other gay kids my age, gay adults, gay Black adults, who were singing and dancing and living a beautiful life. And it gave me the power of imagination. It gave me the ability to dream myself happy, which I had not had before. My mom saved my life. And to this day, my mom, like whenever I host events, if it's live, she would fly from LA to Oakland to come to my events. She'll get on stage. I always put her on stage, and she tells the same story every time. She goes, I don't care, queer, you lesbian, you gay, you bisexual, you're trans, you're asexual, you deserve to be loved. And if your parents don't love you, you come see me. I'll be your mama. I'll love you. And I've seen it. I've seen it with my own queer and trans friends growing up. My mom is here to love us, and I want to be like her.
Vanessa's mom is what I call a true Christian. She lives the teachings and follows in the footsteps of Jesus. Of course, what we're really talking about is how to love people. Vanessa is figuring that out with her movement and got a good head start by being well loved by her mother. May we receive inspiration and guidance today from both of them and the emerging movement to reclaim ugly. So be it.
Good morning. I'm Al DeSalvo, and I'm the Service Associate today. An important way we celebrate life each Sunday is by offering an opportunity to practice generosity. Members and friends support our congregation with an annual pledge paid throughout the year. Another way to support the good work of this congregation is by making a generous contribution as we pass the plate, or by way of one of the options that are shown on the next slide. If you are joining us virtually, you can click on the tiny URL link in the chat window to contribute, or you can send a text to the number shown on the screen. The examples on the slide show you how to label your text to indicate the amount and the purpose or the intent of your gift. We must now say goodbye to our Facebook friends, but please consider joining us on Zoom next time, or better still, visit us in person at 405 Washington Avenue in Albany. You can find more information at albanyuu.org. Our offertory music is This Joy, which is composed by Shirley Cesar and produced by Tiffany Goucher and Abina Kumzan Davis. And it's performed by the Resistance Revival Chorus.
Resistance Revival Chorus believes in the words written by the poet Toy Derricotte when she wrote, "Joy is an act of resistance." We believe in the words of Mr. Harry Belafonte, who said, "When the movement is strong, the music is strong." We sing to revive the hearts of those who fight for social justice, and we sing together for freedom.
All right. And we enjoy welcoming guests and visitors to our service. If you'd like to tell us who you are and where you're from, those here in Community Hall should stand and raise your hand. Our head usher, Dawn Dana, will bring you a microphone so that you can hear, and everybody can hear you. Those joining us on Zoom can click on the raise hand symbol, which you'll find either in the participant window or in the reactions button on your Zoom toolbar. Our technician will invite you to unmute and introduce yourself. You may also, or instead, click on the visitor link you'll find now in the chat window. Anybody in Community Hall who would like to introduce themselves?
I need you to know there is nothing wrong with you if you find the world congealed and unwieldy. You were never meant to serve money, to give loyalty to unprincipled power, to spend your joy frantically soothing yourself in order to tend wounds of being constantly dehumanized. I need you to know that your sense of injury and anger is not overdeveloped. You are meant for love and beauty. You belong where you are known and where your future is not just a resource, but a promise, which you begin to fulfill by being unmistakably, irrevocably yourself. You are not wrong. So be it. And let us sing our final song, which is I Wish I Knew. It's words and music by Billy Taylor, Dick Dallas, and arranged by M.A. Walden. And our musician helping us sing it will be Chris and Randy.
As we extinguish the chalice, please join in the words that are shown on the screen. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Our benediction. Vanessa Lewis informs us that uglification is not a new phenomenon. It's been with our culture for centuries. Many attempts to uglify were employed to legitimize appropriation of First Nations land and to justify slavery. Those ancestors need to create those constructs of dehumanization to create a fictional superiority. Uglifying people has not stopped. It is manifested in more complex and subtle ways now, and it is a way to justify our own existence, a need to avoid working out our own weaknesses, our own prejudices. May we as individuals and as a congregation continue to work on eliminating our tendencies to uglify our fellow humans. And a quote, I think appropriately, from Samuel Johnson: the true measure of a person is how he treats a person who can do him absolutely no good. Our thanks to musicians, the Albany UU Choir, Randy Rosette, Chris Jensen, and Alyssa Yeager. Our ushers today were Dawn Dana and Kathy Harris and Kristen Abbas. Our pastoral care associates, Chuck Manning and Ann Lipinski. Our service associate is me, Al DeSalvo. Welcomers today were Don Adele and Barb Manning here in Community Hall, in the building, and Peter Brown online. Our greeter today was Jean Bolgatz. And our coffee hosts, yes, we have coffee hosts again, Sharon Babla and the Wellspring Organization. Our office support is from Tammy Goddard and Patience Pruchette. And our technical support up in the balcony, Kate Pierce and Dick Dana. And flowers today are donated and arranged by Nancy Shea for her great niece, who will be delivering her baby soon by cesarean section because of some complications that need to be resolved. We also have a critical announcement from our president, Patty Jo Newell, in reference to some important upcoming meetings.
Good morning. Yes, thank you, Al. I'm announcing this morning that our annual meeting will be held next Sunday, May 22nd at noon. It will be a multi-platform meeting in both Community Hall and online via Zoom.